Welcome everyone to Journeys of Faith. It's a series that we continue now, a series of interviews with our parishioners telling their story of how faith has been working in their lives. So our guest today is Mo Pratt. Mo is a parishioner here at Ave Maria Parish, and he is very involved. He's an active parishioner. He heads up our safety committee at Ave Maria Parish, and he's on our board of specified jurisdiction for Our Lady's School, and he serves on our parish pastoral council as well. So he's an all-in parishioner. Welcome, Mo.
Thank you,
Happy
Father.
to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Yeah.
Mo, let's begin with the early years. You're growing up in your family and the role that faith and church, played early on in your life.
Sure. I grew up. I was born in Salem, Mass. I grew up in Salem, in Lynn, and then for the most part, my younger years were spent in Peabody. I really graduated. I grew up in Peabody. I graduated from Peabody High in 1980. I went on to Northeastern University from there, where I got a bachelor's degree. But when I was younger, in my household, there were 4 children and my mom and my dad. And we were a family of faith, and we believed in God, and I said my prayers every night. But going to church was not a requirement. We didn't go to church when I was younger. When I was 7 years old, my parents got divorced. And that was difficult because my sister went with my dad, the 3 boys stayed with my mom, so that was difficult. And then my mom got sick when I was younger. She ended up passing away when I was 20 from cancer. So my brother Harry and I were on our own. If you can imagine, I was 20, he was 22, and we were on our own. And I'd love to say that we made wonderful choices and everything was great, but that wasn't the case.
Okay.
We maybe didn't make some great choices. And right around my early 20s, I started focusing on, as they say, people, places, and things. And that was important to me. Who am I with? Can I get a date with this person? Can I buy that? Can I go here? I know I have to work in the morning, but let me go to this party. And I didn't make all the best choices.
Okay.
But luckily, and I wasn't going to church. Church was still not a big part of my life. But luckily, through the grace of God, and it really was through the grace of God, my brothers and some relatives, specifically an aunt and an uncle, kind of gave me a little guidance. And then I was running a lot those days. I was in a running group. And one of my running buddies, Dan, said, I noticed that after the run you go out for a couple of beers or you have a date or whatever you're doing, and your life is pretty crazy. I said, well, yeah, that's just how it is, Dan. He said, well, why don't next Sunday after the run, why don't you come to church with me? Okay, I'll try that. I went to church with Dan. Lo and behold, I loved it through the support of Dan and another guy that I worked with, Jack Carmichael, who ended up becoming a Catholic priest. The 2 of them kind of said to me, why don't you try a little more church? So I became active in my church here in Linfield, Our Lady's. I went to I did my Cursillo. Again, that same guy Dan and my friend Vicky sponsored me in my Cursillo in 1994. And that was life-changing. And I did turn my life around. I gave my life to God, and it has given me rewards 1,000 times over. And kind of a funny story, but a true story, is at that time when I was turning my life around, I was going to confession. And I went to confession, and I heard the one word, Father, that you never want to hear a priest say during your confession. In the middle of my confession, the priest said, wow. And I said, that's probably not a word you want to hear. So that was kind of a little kick in the pants that maybe you want to change things a little bit. So I did. And I became active in my church. And it has been wonderful, wonderful ever since. And God's always watched over me through the difficult times. But since I'm going to church, God has allowed me to take, and this is important, take the focus off myself, which it was when I was younger. It was all about me and what can I was always a pretty good guy, but I wasn't focusing on other people, and God has helped me focus on others.
Well, let's go back to something you said about your family life, and particularly your parents.
Yes.
Getting divorced at a very young age for you. What was that like? Did you feel abandoned, not only, by them perhaps, but even by God? Did you feel kind of a deprivation or abandonment during that time?
I did, and especially back then, nobody was getting divorced. So when your parents said that you were getting divorced and they were too busy kind of arguing with each other, and my mom, God love her, was so busy trying to make a living after we were on our own. We did the welfare thing for a while.
Sure.
And you as a young child, you pick up on the vibes that, wow, I don't think these folks really care about me. Absolutely, you do feel abandoned. Luckily, like I said, I had some relatives that stepped in and took wonderful care of me. Right. But it was yes, you absolutely do have a sense of abandonment.
I think you mentioned your relatives, but later on in young adulthood, Mo, you tell, I think, a very inspiring story of how your friends, your fellow runners, really helped you change course in your life. As you said, you weren't making good decisions at that point, and obviously people notice that. People that you trust, people with whom you associate, they notice that, and they just didn't notice it. They actually intervened and invited you to come. In the case of your running buddies, they invite you to come to church.
They did. And Father, I would say that I wasn't out robbing banks after we went running, and I wasn't out, God forbid, killing people. But they just picked up on, what's this guy doing after we go running? Because I don't think he's doing healthy things. So I would say that it doesn't have to be flagrant for one of our parishioners to notice that somebody can be invited to the church. It could be as simple as, geez, I noticed all that fella does is spend time watching TV, and he seems alone, and he doesn't really do anything. Maybe he's not in the happiest place. Again, it doesn't have to be a horrific chain of events. It could be just as simple as you notice something, or it's you yourself that, I go to work, I go home, I go to the gym, and that's kind of it. Maybe there's room for something else.
Beautiful.
And that's what these folks noticed. Maybe there was room for something else.
Let's talk about young adulthood, because that has been a very consistent theme in this series. How our guests, perhaps you too, have found that in young adulthood, the first instinct is to conform to the culture, to do what your peers are doing. And that often takes us off track, when it comes to our relationship with God and the church. We're so busy trying to conform to what everybody else is doing that, we're not really paying attention to, the nudges that the Holy Spirit gives us, to follow our conscience, to do the right thing, to worship God, to live the virtues of the Christian. Now, it sounds like that kind of happened to you too.
It did. And one of the things that, again, my friend Dan said to me, he said, you might have some people in your life that you can't spend time with anymore. And I said, no, these are my buddies. And he said, yeah, but maybe, you know, you don't need to hang out with your buddies. And again, luckily, I made a great choice and I spent more time with this group of friends over here. The kids I graduated high school with, the Bill and the Doug and the Bob and the Steve and these guys that were wonderful people. And a little less time with the, hey, let's go out for beers, let's go out. Yes, absolutely, Father. My mother used to say, to thine own self be true. And that's just what it is. Sometimes you have to make a difficult decision. Gee, you know what? I can't spend time with these people that I've been spending time with. I need to make some, that's the big thing. I need to make some changes. Yeah. And it's not always easy. There are two ways to do things, the easy way and the hard way. The easy way is, well, I'll figure it out tonight while I'm out with these goofballs. Right. That doesn't work. Right. The tough choice is, why don't I just kind of relax a little bit? And again, these folks I was spending time with, Father, they weren't out doing crazy things. But they weren't going back for their master's degree, which I ended up doing. Because my family and my friends encouraged me to do that. They weren't going to church, which I ended up doing. They weren't doing a lot of volunteer work, which I ended up doing. It's almost that place where it's kind of vanilla. And if you find yourself in that vanilla area, maybe it's time to make a change. Because there's so, I'll use it, I'll beat this metaphor to death. There are so many flavors out there, right? So don't just settle for the vanilla. Right. Go try different things. Right, exactly. Yeah. And you did. I did. And I know you as someone who's very generous. You are eager to help people. I think you mentioned that. Thank you. Before. And that coupled with this insight that you've got after listening to your friends and family members, you know, it's time for a change. My life needs to go in a different direction because this is getting me nowhere, you know, when it comes to where I want to be. Right. 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 And at the time, Father, I had a wonderful job. I was working for Charlotte Bank, if you can think back that far. I wasn't out on the streets. I wasn't doing drugs. I was fine. Yeah. But yes, Father, you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, is it time for a change? And I would urge people to do that. You could be a multi-billionaire with what you think is a wonderful life. You have all the toys and everything. But sometimes, am I doing the right thing? You know, whatever you do for the least among you, you do for me. Is it time to go out and help somebody? Yeah. And let's go to another phase of your life, one that's now more recent. Yes. And first of all, you've gone through some very difficult moments in the last few years. First of all, a marriage of 23 years ending in divorce. Yes. And then a very unexpected, serious open heart surgery. Yes. And so, you know, can you talk about those, Mo, and really the challenge to faith that both of those experiences obviously brought you as they would anyone? Yes. First of all, my divorce was not one of those divorces where there was anger and hatred and all that. Nor was it one where two people just grew apart. Unfortunately, there were some circumstances that we couldn't overcome. So that's sometimes even more difficult. I think it's at least more black and white when, look, I don't like you, you don't like me, we're going our separate ways. That was not the case. So that was very difficult. But through my faith and having coffee with Father Rick, I was able to get through it. And my ex-wife and I are still supportive of each other, which is wonderful. And at the same time, I had to have open heart surgery, which was quite trying. But throughout all of this, I just handed it over to God. I always say it would be like me trying to build a rocket. this is too big for me. I'm going to hand it over to the experts. Early on, I looked to God and I said, God, this is much too big for me. I'll be here and I'll pray and I'll go to church, but I asked that you take the lead on this. I didn't just ask for his guidance. I kind of asked him to take it over. And he did. And God is still helping me through this. And through the graces of God, I'm able to get through it.
I was so touched, really, Mo, as you moved into the surgery and beyond, the rehab, that you really put your trust in God. The outcome of all of this is really in God's hands, and that's certainly an act of faith, right there. So what did you do that consciously? Was that something intentional on your part? Entrusting really your life to God.
Yes, it was not a passive decision where I kind of just, I'm not going to think about it. I guess God or somebody will take care of it. Nope. I handed it over to God, and I remember a couple of days before I went into surgery, when I went in for surgery, my boss came in to see how I was doing. I said, I'm fine, just finishing up some things, and I'm going to take care of this file before I go, and I'll do this and that. And he said, oh, so is today your last day? And this was like a Friday. I said, no, I'm going in for surgery on Wednesday, so I'll be here all day Tuesday. And he kind of laughed. and he said, you don't look like you're about to go through what you're about to go through. And he laughed. And I said, well, it's not up to me. I've given it over to the surgeon, but more. So I gave it over to God. And a follow-up story is even the surgeon, and I might not be the smartest guy, but the surgeon at Mass General was explaining to me what they were going to do and how they were going to cut my chest open and all this. I said, okay, all right. And he looked at me and he said, and maybe he picked up that, I don't think this guy's too bright, but he said, because my response was, oh, okay, all right. And he said, you're going in for open heart surgery. I said, yeah. He said, okay. And I explained to him, I said, doctor, I appreciate all your efforts, but really, it's up to God. He's got this. And he also was a man of faith, so he understood that. But it was kind of funny that I really I wasn't I was concerned, but I wasn't too worried, Father, because when the big things in life come and it's really too big, hand it over to God, and he'll take care of it. It may not always be the exact outcome you were hoping for, but 59 years, I can tell you that God's always been there.
Right.
He always takes care of me. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
So your faith really was a major resource for you in going into that surgery. And it was unexpected. You did not.
No.
You did not plan this at all. But
Nope.
there was a certain urgency to get it done.
Yes,
as
there
a
was.
matter of fact, and with such a serious operation and an uncertain outcome and future, you handed it to God.
I did.
And you place it in God's hands, and I think that's certainly an act of faith, on your part. So. You're back to work now.
I am. Yes.
After, the surgery and some rehab time and everything.
Yes.
Tell us about your job, Mo.
So I'm an assistant superintendent over at the Essex County Sheriff's Department. I've been there about over 15 years full-time. It's a wonderful place. I have tremendous fellow employees who have visited me and kept an eye on me while I was out, and now that I'm back, they're so good to me, and they're so helpful. So I'm back to work on a limited basis, but going back to work has been wonderful. Oh, it's so good for the melon. Yeah, it's been great, and it's a very, as you can imagine, it's a busy place. It's a busy place. But they're keeping an eye on me, making sure that I don't overdo it. I have a tendency to be all in, So they
Yes, I
kind of.
noticed.
Yeah. So they, after a
Yeah.
while, they say, they send me home early sometimes, and they say that it's, you know, for my health and they're being protective
Sure.
of me. I think they just want peace and quiet.
Can you tell us about the prison?
Yes.
I was involved in prison ministry at MCI Framingham for many years, you know, going into the prison to celebrate Mass and the sacraments and just being a pastoral presence there. Can you tell us about the prison and what your experience is and the need also for faith, you know, behind bars?
Sure.
And also for those prison guards, yourself, others, you know, who are ensuring the safety, the well-being, and the well-ordering of, you know, those who are incarcerated.
I don't think that the Essex County Sheriff's Department is much different than most places in Massachusetts, and that is this. The inmates there that we have in our custody are people first. I think most correctional officers get that
Yes.
these days. Now, our place really revolves on one word, and that is respect. We respect the inmates, they respect us, and there's kind of there is an understanding that we do our jobs, you do your, you do what we ask you to do, or sometimes have to tell you to do. But we're charged with care, custody, and control. Care's the first one, Father. So we provide, on a religious basis, we provide a host of clergy to cover all religious beliefs, and we provide that to the inmates. We have a chapel. Father Butafero comes in sometimes from
Our wonderful Father Butafero.
He's
yes.
wonderful.
Yeah, he's great.
He comes in. I've seen Father Tony there, I know. So it's really important to us that we provide religious support for all the inmates
Great.
in our custody. Absolutely. And some of these inmates, that's sometimes their main source of
It's their
relief
lifeline,
and
really.
their lifeline.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we provide a neat, clean, safe environment for them. We provide programs, education, all that. I'm not going to sound like a commercial, but we try to take as best care of them so that when they're released, they're better equipped to go back into society. And part of that, Father, is religion. Religion. On more than one occasion, an inmate has said to me, God bless, mate. God bless, my friend. Sure.
We're all better off, aren't we, Mo, if the goal in a prison is not, that they live out their sentence, their punishment, but safety, certainly, but rehabilitation. We want, these people to come back into society, into their lives, with another kind of attitude and maybe even some skills.
Absolutely.
That they can apply to their lives so that they are productive and they are behave in a way that's more in line with a good citizen. So, but I've learned that from my work, but it sounds like that's what you're kind of trying to do,
We are, Father. When Sheriff Carpenter took over, one of the things he said was programs.
Yeah.
We are going to take as best care of these people as we can. And if you're not there to care for the inmates, you go find something else to do.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's a real priority then. That's wonderful.
It is.
Wonderful.
You can imagine with my personality that fits in fine.
It sure does.
Are there times when you have to be more strict? Of course. And the correctional officers are well trained in that, but they're just as trained in, because we gotta take care of these folks.
Beautiful.
That's what we do as best we can. Yeah.
So, from that experience, you have brought, a wealth of skill sets and commitment to our new safety committee.
Yes.
At Ave Maria Parish. Can you tell me, in your own words, what your experience has been there. What does the safety committee do, and what are your priorities as far as keeping our community safe when we gather, particularly for worship?
Sure. When the Boston Archdiocese contacted you and said we would like churches to consider having safety committees, and you spoke to me about it, we realized that we need to, as best we can, protect our parishioners from a catastrophe. And that's what the safety committee is there for. We try to have somebody at every Mass. We've spoken to Linfield Police Department, and they came to each of our churches, went through the churches to tell us what we needed to do.
They were so helpful, weren't they?
They were wonderful, and they still are. If we ever have to call them and say, hey, we might have an incident at a church at the 9 o'clock Mass on Sunday, or we might have a little problem, could you help us out? Rest assured, there were a couple of cruisers pretty darn close to our church.
Right.
That morning. They're wonderful. But what the safety committee is there for is to protect against horrific events. We're not going down and telling some fellow that he's in the wrong pew, or telling a lady she can't park there. None of that. We're there to provide coverage in the event that something horrific happens. We can hopefully stop the threat and contact the police department and get them there as soon as possible. That's what we try to do. So far, we've had a couple of minor instances, nothing major, knock on wood, right? But that's what we do. We try to have somebody at every single Mass, in the back of that church, at the doors, looking out at the parking lot.
Yeah, and that it's kind of a sad development in one way, that even in houses of worship, we have to be very, very vigilant, because of what's happening in the wider culture in our country and beyond, with the violence that we've seen. But I think it's just been a terrific addition to use the word care, the care we offer our parishioners, doing our best to ensure their safety as well as their comfort as they come to praise and worship God.
It's so important.
Absolutely,
So
and so I'm so grateful to you and all those who are on the safety committee, and certainly if anyone in the audience, who hears this would like to, be considered as a member of the safety committee, they could certainly contact you or me.
Absolutely, Father. Yeah, we're always looking for new members of the safety committee. Absolutely. Sure.
Great.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, and you're also involved in the Board of Specified Jurisdiction at Our Lady's School and on our Parish Pastoral Council. So with all of those areas of involvement, Mo, and actually in our funeral ministry now too.
Yes.
With all of those areas, very diverse areas of involvement, what experience have you had? Has that supported your faith, or at least been an outlet for your faith?
Yes, and without sounding like a plug, if anybody's interested in joining one of these committees, I urge them to apply for it, because boy, there's nothing like walking into a meeting. Now, sometimes you're going to discuss finances and student population and all these things. That might as well be, you almost could be at a college board meeting or a Fidelity investment meeting, but everybody in the room believes in God, and you start your meetings with a prayer, and you're all there for each other. It's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to be with what they say like-minded people.
Yes.
It's a wonderful opportunity to serve God, and to serve your fellow parishioners, and to serve the community. I love it. I get so much out of it.
I think you're so right. When you're with people of faith, people who simply want to support the community, whether it's our school or our parish, in various ways, as you said, whether it's the finance council or the pastoral council doing planning, for the future, the school board overseeing, whatever, needs to be discussed and decided upon at the school. All of those areas are important, and also the funeral ministry. You just kind of started that.
Yes.
You've been doing some wakes, I understand.
Yes.
Mo, and how has that been for you?
That actually may be the most rewarding of them all, because when you go to a wake and you say a prayer with the family and you're there to support them, it is, as you know, Father, it's hands-on. You're directly there with the family of the person that passed away. When you're doing the graveside service, you're directly involved with the family. And it is so rewarding. And it's directly.
It's really part of the consolation that we offer people doing a committal service at a cemetery, the final, chapter, if you will, in the church's liturgical celebration of
Yes.
someone's funeral. But it is a very meaningful, experience to accompany a family, who have lost a loved one, sometimes in very tragic circumstances as
Yes.
well.
And I have to say, the reason why I can do that is because the training I received from you, from Father Tony, from Kate McGrath. Okay, look, here's what it's going to be like when you get to the
Yes.
gravesite. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to follow this. Nobody's thrown out there not knowing what they do. So it's great for me. I have a great sense of comfort when I go there, and that the family picks up on that too. Okay, this person, that he knows what he's doing, he's comforting us. So the people that you and Kate and other people put in these positions, they're always well trained, and that's very important. You can imagine you're doing a committal service for your loved one, and you've got somebody kind of stammering, and the training that you all provide is wonderful. It's wonderful. So
And
thank you for that.
You're welcome, Mo, and that too is, if anyone in the audience is interested in participating in that aspect of our funeral ministry, certainly welcome. Just let us know about your interest. Okay, Mo, I want you to look at the camera now. And based on your journey of faith, what we've just talked about, your growing up, your experience of divorce, both your own parents and your own marriage, the open heart surgery that you went through, and everything else, how faith is unfolded, in your own life. What advice would you offer those who are viewing and listening to our interview today?
When times are good, when times are bad, turn to God. God will not let you down. He's always there for you. Share the faith with others. And one of the wonderful gifts that God gives us is the chance to help others. Help others as best you can.
And you speak authentically from your own experience, Mo, on particularly that latter point. Thank you so much for joining us
Thank you, Father.
for this interview. And thank you for tuning in to Journeys of Faith for this episode. Stay tuned for another one in the future. Blessings to all of you.